So along State Highway 48, which is the road that from Brownsville goes out to Port Isabel and South Padre Island, we are at the south boundary of the Laguna Arascosa Wildlife Refuge, and across Highway 48 towards the ship channel, which is a man-made ship channel, is the site for the proposed Rio Grande LNG export terminal. So that's kind of where we are. There's always prevailing winds, but this is a particularly exceedingly windy day today. And if you were out here watching this, you would see that it's kicking up a lot of dirt and a lot of dust. And sort of like it, having this much dust on such a windy day is an example of environmental degradation, because the site that the Port of Brownsville is leasing to the Rio Grande LNG project, they clear cut and demolished about 1,000 acres, almost 1,000 acres of wetlands, mangrove forest, habitat for, aquatic bird species, water bird species, other animals, Texas tortoise, lots of other animals. Destroying 1,000 acres of wetland here has now caused these conditions that look like the Dust Bowl. So this is environmental destruction. These are the consequences of environmental destruction. The so-called liquid natural gas industry, LNG, all of that gas right now is mined through hydraulic fracturing. It's called fracking. And so this is gas that's being fracked out of the Permian Basin and the Eagle Ford Shale. Fracking is one of the most environmentally destructive, one of the most polluting ways of mining and in the industry of mining. It takes clean groundwater, it mixes it with a proprietary blend of horrible, caustic, carcinogenic chemicals, injects it into the ground, which breaks the rock, which liberates the gas and oil, and then the wastewater, the poisonous, carcinogenic waste that is sometimes radioactive if they've gone through a uranium bed. Now radioactive wastewater is then re-injected down these older wells, and then that just seeps into the ground and poisons the ground, and then as it seeps through the layers of rock and stuff, it'll poison what groundwater is left. That's how that fracked gas is produced. And the privatized oil and gas industry, fossil fuel industry, they want a market for this gas. And so they want to build pipelines, and they want to build gas export terminals along the Texas coast and Louisiana coast. They want to export all of that gas out to the global markets so that shareholders and board members can get wealthier. 100% of the gas that's mined that they want to send through this gas export terminal, 100% of it's going to go to the global market. So there's literally no economic benefit to the local communities. The long-term effect, though, is going to be that we're going to have higher rates of cancer, higher rates of asthma, higher rates of COPD as a result of the toxic gas industry. When you bring this gas out of fracking, you're doing environmental destruction in order to do hydraulic fracturing. But then to refine that gas brought through here by pipeline, which hasn't been built yet, if they were to bring that here by pipeline, there's always going to be leaking of those gases. That's pollution. Once they get here, they have to refine the gas and also liquefy it in order to export it. Well, in the refining of that gas, it's going to release a lot of other gases, because natural gas is not just methane. That's what they want. They want the methane, but it produces all these other gases, including benzene and other gases when you burn it. They have to burn off the excess for issues of pressure and also refining. And there's excess gas that they'll just burn off. That's what you see in flares, like flare stacks. And sometimes they don't even light the flares. They just release the excess gas or release the toxic gases other than the methane too, and sometimes methane. So that's just going to get into the air here, and it's going to reduce the the air quality here and downwind. On top of that, because they have destroyed wetlands, they're removing just the natural like flood prevention cycle and sort of water cycle there. And, this kind of construction and industrial pollution is going to leave pollution in the ground and in the environment here for decades upon decades to come. What we're looking at is a lot of destruction, but at the same time, because the gas industry, the fossil fuels industry in the United States is privatized, nobody's going to get rich. Nobody's going to get money except for the owners of the company. There's not going to be any economic benefit for local people. And then on top of that, with privatized healthcare, we don't even have access to healthcare to help us through it when and if we have higher rates of asthma or higher rates of cancer. We're not going to have access to the healthcare to help alleviate that suffering. But the people who are getting wealthy off of these projects, these privatized projects, they're just going to keep making money hand over fist while our communities down here are just going to get sicker and not have the kind of money to access the healthcare to get better. There's going to be a lot of negative long-term effects. In fact, I would say all of the negative effects completely, many times over, outweigh whatever imagined economic benefits would be. The harm is far greater than the benefit. There's little to no benefit for this project.
Couple more questions.
Mm.
Who is responsible for this economic degradation that's happening?
Oh man, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, there are a lot of culprits. I mean, first of all, like I said, the fossil fuel industry is private, so every person who is a part of this company, Next Decade LLC, whatever, who are doing this project, all of them are responsible. There's the county judge, Eddie Trevino, and the other Cameron County commissioners. They're responsible for their level of approval of this project and their support of this project, including giving tax abatements to these projects. That's another thing. Because there are tax abatements in place, these companies that are billion-dollar industries, the oil and gas industries are billion-dollar industries, they're not going to be paying their fair share of taxes. And so that's going to force the tax burden for local people to increase, while billion-dollar companies are allowed to get away with tax breaks. So they're responsible for that part as well. And then you have the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in Washington, D.C., giving permits for these projects. And right now, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission refuses to give a stop work order to the Rio Grande LNG project after the D.C. Court of Appeals on August 6th of 2024 claimed or ruled, they made a ruling that the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, was in error to give permits for Rio Grande LNG by Next Decade, Texas LNG by Glenfarne, and the Rio Bravo pipeline, which would be the gas pipeline that would bring gas to these facilities, that all of those projects had insufficient environmental justice review, and that it was so egregious that the court canceled the permits for these three projects that are aimed at Brownsville. And the chair of the FERC at the time, Willie Phillips, refused to issue a stop work order to Rio Grande LNG. And not only that, but local officials like the mayor of Brownsville, the county judge, Eddie Trevino, they presented the gas industry's talking points, put together by their PR teams. They just echoed and parroted those talking points and said that the court's decision was more like just a bump in the road to progress, and framed it as a bump in the road to progress, when really it was, no, these companies did so bad of a job in presenting their application for a permit that even the court, in an unprecedented decision, the court said, no, the DC Court of Appeals said, no, these permits are invalid because you didn't even apply for them with due diligence. And of course, on top of all of that, this is sacred land of the Carrizo Comecrudo tribal nation. This is sacred lands of the Ixtocna. And there has been no consultation from either the FERC or from the LNG companies or from the state of Texas, Texas Commission of Environmental Quality. There hasn't been any consultation with the Army Corps of Engineers because this is going to involve, waters of the United States. The Cameron County, Brownsville City Council, none of these entities and organizations, none of them have consulted in good faith with the leadership of the Carrizo Comecrudo tribal nation. So that makes all of them and these projects in direct violation of the United Nations Universal Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So these projects are unethical, they are immoral, they're environmentally destructive, they will create monetary benefit for a very small amount of people who don't even live here, while it destroys sacred land, has negative environmental impacts, and makes our communities less healthy and less safe without providing any economic or health benefit to this area, while it's going to create pollution that'll last many decades. It's all bad.